Yeah, it's pretty simple. I win. Google me.
I love that. Kurt Cignetti, coach of the year right now in college football for the Indiana Hoosiers, 7-0. They're hosting game day, and he was able to flip that roster in a few weeks.
Yeah, it's pretty simple. I win. Google me.
Incredible. Oh, one of the biggest mic drops in the history of college football. Good morning. Welcome in. We are the Out of Bounds Show, ESPN 105.9 The Zone. You can watch the show right now. Go to YouTube. Search Out of Bounds Sports. Out of Bounds Sports. That's the channel. And Jackson Meadows has that thing popping. He's changed it all up, made it better, rebooted it, and it looks great. YouTube, search Out of Bounds Sports. You can see the helmets that are on the set this week, and they're the winners. Vanderbilt, Florida, a couple others. Diego Pavia should be the player of the year. He's the most fun dude to watch, or one of the most fun dudes to watch in college football. We welcome in Steve Robertson, Gene's Page, 247 Sports, Hail State Insider. Mississippi State has not won a game since Labor Day. They need to win a game. They need to put a W down, put a W up on the scoreboard, put it on paper, put it on ESPN.com. Their fan base has hung in there, but they are hosting Arkansas. They are a dog, as they should be, and but they do have a chance to win the game. So we welcome in Steve Robertson on the Farm Bureau Insurance guest line. The line is going down. It's gone down 2 points. Was at 8.5. It's now Arkansas laying 6.5. Steve Robertson, what does Mississippi State have to do to win this weekend other than score one more point than the Hogs?
Well, I think they got to play like they did last week, but maybe make a few better decisions within the ball game. You know, sometimes you get in these games and you look up at the scoreboard and you're like, man, we're in the game. We got to make a play. And you do something that maybe is uncharacteristic. You know, like you fake a punt or you go for it on fourth down in a bad situation and you put your defense in a bad situation. And I thought that happened last week. And listen, the thought process behind that is a winning mindset. But sometimes you just have to make the football play. You look at the statistics from last week's game. It's basically the same game. State outgains them offensively. State gets more first downs. And, the difference in that first half is just, A&M just converted, I think, their first 7 third downs, regardless of distance. You know, there was one that was, 3rd and 24? I mean, it's just ridiculous to give that up. But, it's basically Arkansas is A&M light. And they run a lot of the same concepts. Philosophically, they're the same. They want to establish the run. Problem they're going to have the Arkansas is you're without RB1 this week. And, they're going to start Bryson Russell as RB1. He's a big, beefy 250-pounder. And they're going to try to get out there, lean on that Bulldog defense a little bit, but he's not as dynamic. You know, he's a one-cut runner. And I think that's the reason you're seeing this line come down is, this is an Arkansas offense that has struggled to score points in SEC play. I mean, they were averaging over 40 points a game in non-conference. It's 17.5 now in conference play. And so Mississippi State, on the other hand, is averaging 24 points a game against greater competition. And so the game is at home. I think State is ascending, if you can say that, and Arkansas is kind of descending. And so I think there's an apex they meet this weekend, and I think there's a good chance Mississippi State's going to win this football game.
Wow. All right, so you're cautiously optimistic?
Yeah, it's a good way to characterize it. I think, State getting healthy is big after the open date. I mean, we don't know the status of Mario Craver. We'll find out this evening when they release their first availability report. I suspect that he will be questionable at best, perhaps even doubtful. But, I think this wide receiver room can run with anybody in the country. It's just can you protect long enough to give Van Buren the ability to distribute the football to those playmakers? I mean, Kevin Coleman has proven to be an absolutely dynamic player. Like to have more offensive snaps, but the reality of it is that I think that Arkansas secondary is going to be challenged. But that defensive front that Arkansas has is good. They're not as good as Texas, not as good as Georgia. They're not as good as Texas A&M, but they're good, and they want to get after the quarterback. And so I think, Levy will have to design some things up, maybe where you roll the pocket a little bit, kind of evade the pressure or something. But, I think this is a situation where it's probably State's best chance to win a football game, perhaps since Florida. And you got to go take advantage of that.
Oh, the staff is in desperate need of a win. There's no question about that. Steve Robertson, genespage.com, 247 Sports. He joins us on the Farm Bureau Insurance Guest Line. Levy and crew have an opportunity to win a game this weekend. They're 6.5-point underdogs to the Razorbacks. We mentioned this earlier. Petrino and Arkansas have the 96th ranked offensive scoring efficiency against Mississippi State's defense, and defensive scoring efficiency, MSU's ranked 122nd. So what will give? What is that going to look like throughout the kind of morning and afternoon? You mentioned health. Outside of Craver, I mean, they've gone through 3 physical games. They played at Texas, at Georgia, and A&M at home. Those are 3 of the most physical teams in the country. How healthy is this team right now?
Well, I'm eager to see what DeMonte Russell's status is tonight. But outside of that, I mean, it's been pretty good. I mean, both those guys were helped from the field last week, Craver and Russell. But that was the concern I had when the schedule first came out. A lot of people thought, hey, A&M is probably a winnable game. And I was like, I just don't like where it sits on the schedule, because they're coming off an open date. You're coming off a game at Texas, and you have an open date. Then you're at Georgia, 2 teams that are expected to compete for a national championship. And so you expect it to be a bit of a meat grinder, and it has been, but maybe not as bad as we anticipated. And I think that says a lot about the staff and obviously strength and conditioning and the commitment of these players, to kind of commit themselves to being in great physical shape. And so I think you're in good shape. And then you look on the Arkansas side of things, it's a little bit beat up. And you mentioned those scoring efficiency and defensive scoring efficiency numbers. Those were accumulated with Jackson starting at running back. And you looked last week, he was struggling a little bit with a high ankle sprain against LSU. And for that second half of that ball game was not competitive. And it's a 34-10 final, but I don't think in that fourth quarter there was any question whatsoever that LSU was going to win that football game. And Jackson goes down after a 4-yard gain, and I think they managed to get about 30 yards offense the rest of the ball game. And so, Green's it's all going to be kind of put in his lap in many respects. And he is a one-read quarterback. If you sit back there and if his initial read is there, he can execute. He has not been good in the red zone when things get compressed. I mean, that's where a lot of the turnovers have come from, and turnovers were a problem for him last week. But, when you have an offense that is without its best playmaker, there's going to be some up and down. And so I think what you do with him is you make him be a quarterback. You don't sit out there and let him be an athlete. You can't let him be Jaden Daniels. And I'm not trying to make that comparison, but he is a guy when things break down that can hurt you with his legs. And so, maybe you spy him. I don't know. But I think the game is ultimately going to be decided on how he manages that offense and maybe how uncomfortable State can make him.
Ooh. All right. Steve Robertson on the Out of Bounds Show. Brought to you by Pearl River Resort, Dancing Rabbit Golf Club, and the Sportsbook. Bet $50 there. Play award-winning Dancing Rabbit Golf Club for $40. We'll be live from Dancing Rabbit Golf Club tomorrow. All right, I don't have it. I'm not as optimistic as you are on it. I think
you never really are.
Well, yeah, sometimes. I mean, I'm optimistic about the basketball team. I like Matthews and Hubbard and Keyshawn's made strides, and Clary from Penn State, and some of the other guys. But I don't know. I don't think they know how to win yet, and it's going to come down to just a couple of plays in the second half. And I can see Petrino scheming. Look, they may not be good a lot of times throughout the day, okay, because it's not a good offense. I mean, they may be. But Arkansas doesn't have a good offense, 96th in the country, scoring efficiency. But when it comes down to scheming and one big play, and as much as I watched wide receivers run wide open and Connor Wigman couldn't hit them last week, I see, a big play or two in the second half as a backbreaker. Do you have confidence that Coleman Hutzler can scheme up some things in the second half to keep that from happening?
Well, I do, but I also think it's more about somebody making a play. You know, and I wrote about that earlier this week. I mean, like when State was up against it in 2013, and Nico Whitley saved the season for Mississippi State and may have saved Dan Mullen's job, right? I mean, you make the big strip against Alex Collins, against Arkansas, and then, of course, the strip against Bo Wallace in the Egg Bowl. You know, sometimes it's not about a coach putting a person in a position to make a play. Sometimes you got to go make a play. And I think, honestly, you begin to think about that aspect of it. You know, Stone Blanton has played much better the last couple of weeks.
Sure.
Isaac Smith has been consistent throughout the season. You know, somebody's got to step up and say, okay, enough. I'm going to put my foot in the ground, and we're going to say we're going no further. And if my season was on the line with Torian Green having to make the call there late in the ball game, I don't know how much confidence I would have. And if you're on the Mississippi State side of this thing, you're thinking, and we got to make a play to get off the field on third down. Can we have somebody make a play to win this ball game? I think it may be a combination of both, if you know what I'm saying. I mean, it's like I don't know that I have a tremendous amount of green to lead this team on a fourth quarter drive to win a game. So as you mentioned, something's got to give. But the reality of it is somebody's got to step up. It's not about coaching all the time. You know, somebody's got to go make a play. And there were some opportunities last week to make a play defensively. Even on the first drive of the second half, when A&M's driving down, you drop back-to-back pick sixes.
Yeah.
And then ultimately you give up a field goal, you know, on a drive where you should have been off the field. Even if it's not a pick six, even if you stumble over your feet, you end up having to punt and pin them back deep, it may change the complexity of that game. So when those plays are there to be made, players have to make plays.
Oh, yeah. Connor Wigman wanted to throw 5 picks last weekend. I mean, He was begging Mississippi State to beat them. And no doubt about that. He threw 2, but there were 3 more right in the paws, as you know, Steve. Okay. Offensively, running backs are average, although they did rip off. I was even surprised the 2, Daniels and Booth, got 2 big runs to flip the field for the Mississippi State offense. Now, it may not have been a consistent running game throughout the day, but there were 2 big runs. You think they'll continue to try to find something there, Steve, to give Van Buren an opportunity to hit Coleman and Kelly and some of the other guys, Sadu?
Yeah, I think that whole offense, we talked about, you know, State's lack of production of offense in that fourth quarter. I think a lot of that's because of the adjustments that A&M made, right? It's like early on you're able to gash them between the tackles, which shocked me because, again, this A&M front may be the best front State's played all year, certainly from a pass rushing standpoint. But, you know, all of a sudden they're running some stunts early on to try to get in Van Buren's face to make him uncomfortable, and State takes full advantage, and they gash him. And it surprised me that they were able to do that with such proficiency. But I think in the second half, they're like, you know what, we're not going to get cute. We're just going to go out of here and wear these guys down. And they did. But I think against Arkansas, again, I don't think that State's offensive line will wear down with the same frequency it did against A&M because they're so big and physical up front. But, yeah, I think State's going to come out and run the football. And you know, I'd like to see Chris Parson a little bit. I thought we may see him some last week, even if it's just in some design quarterback run stuff. But it's evident they really don't want Van Buren to run the football a lot because they have him slide down all the
Sure.
time, you know. And so there's going to be some plays I think you could change it up. And maybe since you haven't shown this in a couple of weeks, they're not going to prepare for it, maybe perhaps, you know, the way they should. And I think you could maybe catch them with some of that stuff. Because, you know, when the quarterback's handing it off, it's 11 versus 10, right? But when the quarterback's part of the running game, it's 11 versus 11. And so I think you can maybe change the way that they defend the run if you introduce some quarterback run. And perhaps the best way to do that is to give Chris Parson a couple of opportunities in a certain